Yeah, so when looking at the security measures that are asked from us from many of the big studios, the general rule of thumb is no general outbound internet access on what's called the production network. So within the animation and visual effects industries, the protection of IP or intellectual property is a very, very high concern. And we don't want to see, for example, any accidental uploads or wrong attachments to wrong people. So that's where web browser isolation, via Ericom is really, really helpful and useful, just to kind of like help prevent that emailing the file to the wrong person or any unauthorized exposure that may or may not happen by accident. So say, for example, we use Office 365, but the same thing applies for, to Google Apps for Business. So say, for example, if you want people to look at their email, so they can look at the email, they can write their email, but when you go to attach a file, for example, you can't upload any content to that site. So when our artists or content developers, people will want to go into places like YouTube or Google Images and just look to see for reference material, because a lot of the times they're asked to recreate like a certain look or a certain feel to an image or a sequence and that sort of stuff. And the internet can be a great place for reference material. So it's still vital that people have that. The last thing that we would want to is someone accidentally downloading a file from somewhere and then basically it affects like our production data. That would just not be acceptable. So this is a huge benefit that basically web browser isolation, brings to the table, is that, your production network and your web browsing is completely isolated. So at that point, basically, it does provide yet another layer of protection, against from a growing amount of threats. That's one thing that Ericom does really allow us to do. It allows the artist to basically have a sandbox version of the internet that is completely cut off from the rest of what we would call the production network, but still, adhering to the audit requirements that we need to abide to. The other aspect that's really, really beneficial is not just email and reference material, but is also with things like Microsoft Teams or Slack and that sort of stuff, so they can still communicate with their colleagues. And more of these cloud-based solutions have they're able to be a web app. So it's really imperative that people can still use those communication tools, so they're not working in isolation. Really, when using Ericom, we kind of get the best of both worlds. We still basically keep that native user and workstation offline, but they're still able to access email, reference material, IM platforms like Teams or Slack. So that's really beneficial. The solution from Ericom was one of the most performant solutions that we've tested, and this is one of the reasons why we've migrated over to it, simply because it gave our users a much higher level of performance compared to what they were used to, while still hitting those security requirements. The higher the web browser actually experience, the happier the artists will be. Of course, basically, you get some people say, "Oh, I just want access to everything," but really, in today's world, that is just not possible. So one of the other things I should mention is that it also basically gives us more of a guaranteed certainty about the protection of things like from ransomware and malware. So it's obviously stopping stuff from getting into the network, which is obviously a huge security plus. That's kind of a requirement now. So, but the artists, they can work in a secure environment while still having access to those cloud-based resources like email and instant messaging. So without that, it would be very, very hard for them to do their job on a day-to-day basis.